move in Parliament by the Member of Parliament for Medina, Xavier Sosu, who is also a human rights activist, to amend some sections of the Labour Act. The rationale behind this move is to bring some improvement within the maternity circle. And this afternoon, we are joined by him to explore this matter and how that benefits you as a nursing mother and, of course, as a husband as well. Plus, also look at the issue of the sanitary pass. Honorable, you're welcome to the pause.
Thank you very much.
So, this is a private member's motion, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
And you are seeking to amend the Labour Act?
That is so.
To do what exactly?
So currently, the Labour Act provides for, I would say, 3 months maternity leave for women. And almost all labor unions and activists in the space have called for extension of maternity leave over the years. And so somewhere last year in October, I initiated this move in Parliament to initiate an amendment to the labor law to ensure that the maternity leave of women is increased from 3 months to 4 months. And then we introduced a regime of paternity leave. So as a whole, as an advocacy tool, we call it parental leave for all. That way, husbands get to be with their wives at the time of birth for at least a minimum of 7 days and a maximum of 4 weeks. And it could increase depending on whether it was a safe birth or they had stillbirth or they have complicated birth, cesarean sessions, and so on and so forth. So these are basically the purpose of the amendment. And for that of the women, actually the 4 months is just for the regular delivery. It could extend all the way to 6 months, depending on whether it's a cesarean session or you have multiple births. And sometimes there are some complex miscarriages. Right. All these ones are captured under the proposal.
So basically, I want to understand the rationale behind it. I mean, we've been used to 3 months. Now you want to move it a bit further.
Well,
what is informing this proposed move?
I think that the rationale is based on research. In fact, I often say that now we've moved from the traditional way of doing things to research-based approach to legislation. And when you read all the research that we have out there, particularly on maternal health and reproductive health matters, you realize that women need more than 3 months to actually heal properly before they come back to work. Unfortunately, what we have is 3 months. So after 3 months, they are forced to come back to work. That affects their health, one. Two, it affects their productivity, you know, as people who are supposed to contribute to work in the workplace. And it also helps or affects worker retention, because in places where women do not get the benefit of even the 3 months, much less to get like extra months in lieu of salary, it affects their income, and most people would have to stop work because they've delivered. And so if you want to, resolve these matters, bridge the gender gap, bring some more equality and inclusivity for women who just deliver, it's always best to increase the number of years. In fact, I think Sweden has the highest. Is it 9 months or so?
9 months for nursing mothers?
Yes, for nursing mothers. Others have like 6 months. Others have like 7 months, 8 months, depending on the peculiar situations that they face. And so I think it's an amendment in aid of our mothers and our women. It's so strange that we have a population that, we have close to 34 million people, more than 50% are women. And yet we are a bit hesitant when it comes to introducing legislation or pieces of policy that enhance.
But the question is 3 months, and you want to move to 4 months. Some will say that the change is not so
significant.
big. Yes.
Well, I think it may not be significant now, particularly because of our economic circumstance also. Remember that I was introducing this legislation last year at a time that Ghana was struggling to even get to IMF, meet IMF conditionality, and so on and so forth. So you needed to be sensitive. And for learning from the witchcraft accusation bills that we had led in passing in Parliament, as well as the death penalty bills, I understood that there are times I just have to go for the low-hanging fruits. And when you get a low-hanging fruits, you can always, by way of strategy, improve. Currently, as I talk to you, many female MPs have actually advocated that eventually when it gets to the floor, people are propose further amendments,
Right.
right? So it's all about just providing the leadership in the space and giving others opportunity to contribute. In fact, the latest I even heard was the fact that there are women who sometimes feel embarrassed in removing, their breasts in the public
to feed their babies.
Yeah,
right.
And so there are even further proposals that lactating mothers may even have opportunity to work remotely. That is, if organizations could provide that opportunity for them to work remotely whilst they are, in that process. It's all about, improving the mental health and general well-being of women in Ghana.
We will talk about the downside of this, but let me bring in the angle of the men.
Yes.
You are proposing 1 week for them to spend time with their wives, and you could go further.
Yes.
Why 1 week and not the 3 months that you are proposing?
Well, I mean,
the 4 months that you are proposing for.
That's a really great question, but I think that you need to balance all these things with, the productivity issues and so on and so forth. And I don't think that men may necessarily need like 4 months to be with their wife, particularly because of the policy reasoning of the proposal. The 7 days usually are the first, or I'll say it's the first week of the birth of the child. In fact, for even families that are now becoming more nuclear, it takes time for them to either get like a mother or an uncle or like some relative to travel down to be with them to assist the mother. And so the first person in the family that must support the wife, whether it was a cesarean session or it was any of the complicated sessions, is the man. So if the man does not have the freedom in terms of, or the support in doing this, it becomes a problem. And so we're saying that the first 7 days of a child, a lot of things happen. And for many people who are fathers, you bear me witness that sometimes the late night cries of the baby, I mean, to the kind of support the baby needs at that early stage requires that the man has like some space to do that. And that's why we're proposing the first 7 days. In fact, it could go all up to like up to say 4 weeks, depending on whether it's a cesarean session, a complex birth, multiple birth, and so on and so forth. There is a medical doctor that eventually certify what kind of birth it was, based on which now the person could be given the right to go on leave for that period.
So where are we in terms of having it put on the floor of Parliament for consideration?
Well, currently we are at a stage known as the pre-laying engagement. Now, the pre-laying engagement affords the stakeholders in Parliament, like the Gender Committee, and people who have interest generally, including people who have interest outside of Parliament, to come together with the drafting department of Parliament to review proposals that have been put before Parliament. When these proposals are reviewed, it informs the drafting department what further amendment they need to do to the final legislation before it goes to Gazette. After gazetting for 14 days, it will now be read the first time and referred to the Gender Committee of Parliament.
Educate me. So, have you crossed the stage where you've met all the conditions necessary for it to be passed as a private member's bill?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, once the bill is initiated, Parliament would do its own independent review of the bill, and Parliament actually calls to be done what we call the fiscal impact analysis and all that. And it's only when Parliament is convinced that these things have been made that they, by memo, would instruct the member to call for a stakeholder engagement. So we are doing this pursuant to what Parliament now requires as the next stage to move the bill to, the stage where we can actually finally gazette and refer it.
I asked because of the history with the witchcraft bill and the response that came from the president, which is now a matter that because of the president's response, it hasn't come to a stage where we would say that we've come to a finality in terms of having it implemented.
That is very correct. But I think that, when you look at the witchcraft bill as well as the one of the death penalty bills, I think that there may be some other issues rather than just a potential violation of Article 108, because the Article 108 is very clear. It's about imposition of a charge.
Right.
So the bill or the law must seek to impose a charge. These laws do not seek to impose charges. Secondly, it is the application or the scope of application of Article 108 has to do with the Speaker's decision, or the one presiding at that material time. It doesn't live within the space of either the presidency or any other agent of government. And so I think it just requires further engagement, which we are still doing. And I'm hopeful that as part of the goodwill that His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo want to leave for the good people of Ghana, he will, in all goodwill, sign this law to make sure that women who are currently trapped in witch camps will have some reprieve, because no one will do it. We need to do it. So the law is ready.
Right.
It can only be implemented by his signature. We are hoping that he will do that. And I can assure you that these proposals have gone through all the checks, and we are really ready. Once the stakeholder engagement is over, we can have a final draft, get it gazetted, and sure we can have the first reading and referred, and hopefully we should be able to pass these laws before this parliament, expires.
They'll have come to an end. So basically, you are seeking an amendment to a private member's bill to amend portions of the Labour Act.
Correct.
To give women more time to spend with their babies.
Exactly.
The issue is that we all live in this country, and there are countless stories of women who got pregnant, and sometimes they are sacked. I mean, people have lost their jobs because they got pregnant.
That's correct.
Or people have lost their job because they got married, and the bosses felt that they will get pregnant soon, and for that reason, it will affect their productivity, and so they are laid off. Wouldn't this embolden such, employers to act in a manner that may not be consistent with the provisions of the law?
Well, I think that we must rather open up that conversation. No employer has a right to terminate the appointment of another only because she's pregnant.
They may not do it officially.
That's
they may
correct.
use other means to have them fired.
I agree, but I think that we must fish out every employer who does that. Every lady who is sacked on account of getting married or on account of getting pregnant must have the boldness to challenge those decisions. That's why we have institutions like SHRAJ, Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. Obviously, that process of either compelling you to resign or using all kinds of ways to frustrate you so you will just leave the employment can amount to, an inducement to quit your job. And it will be an administrative injustice to those women. And I think we all have a duty to protect our women in this space. This has given me even a new idea, because then we will seek, as part of the amendment, when we go to the stakeholder, and that's why we will be inviting all of you, as part of the amendment, to even criminalize conduct of people who would try to induce women to quit their job only because they became pregnant. In the first place, who got the women pregnant? And is it their fault that they are pregnant? How do we sustain our society, the sustainable development goals? How do we keep them going? How do we ensure intergenerational equity by way of utilizing our resources today to ensure that the future generation would also be able to use? We can only do that through procreation. And procreation is a natural consequence of marriage, and so long as we keep marrying, we'll continue to give birth. And so the advocacy must rather be to give a voice to the women, to strengthen them to stand for their rights when it comes to their reproductive health.
Yeah, because in some other jurisdictions, laws protect women a lot and children. Is it your expectation that this, if finally passed by Parliament, will give women some protection, especially in the area of childbirth?
Absolutely,
and nursing?
Absolutely. In fact, when you look at the mischief that we seek to cure, was what exactly you mentioned. There are many women who are suffering when they do not need to suffer. And they are suffering for natural consequences. In fact, it was part of the policy consideration of that tax on parts as well. Because why should somebody, be discriminated against just because she's a woman? Just because, she didn't create a condition. The fragile nature of women when they become pregnant, remember how they go through the pain they go through for the 9 months before they deliver. A woman goes through hormonal changes, biological changes within 9 months. And when he delivers, you want them hormonal changes to correct within 3 months. That is not possible. So I think that we should be able to embolden our women, and the men would have to get involved, because historically, our society has been structured in ways that even though women are more, men occupy major positions of power, of influence. And so when decisions are being taken, people are taking those decisions from a man's perspective. So what if we terminate the job? Who will terminate the job? Is the man.
Right.
Is the man CEO? Is the man who is the one complaining. So I think that we should be able to stand for our women, fight for them, and stand with them.
So after the first reading and the referral is done, you hope to open it up to public discourse.
Further public discourse.
Where you hope to receive petitions,
absolutely,
and memos,
further memos. And so if you are out there, you are, female, gender activist, you are a female activist, you are a woman, you are a queen mother, you are whatever role you play, whatever space you have, this is the time for us to rally together to push this amendment. Now remember that in the quest to fight for free, fair, and just society, it doesn't just happen. Activism is so important. If you don't let your voice count, nobody will count your voice.
Right.
So we need everyone to get out there and make the voice of women count on this matter.
Finally, briefly on the sanitary pad issue.
Well, so the sanitary pad, you recall that it was in September last year when I introduced a bill to take out taxes on sanitary pads. And the bill at the time sought to do 4 things. 1, to take away the 15% VAT on locally manufactured pads, to take away the 15% VAT on imported pads, take away the 15% tax on raw materials used for manufacturing of locally manufactured, used to manufacture local pads.
Right.
And then the last one was to reclassify pads. Because currently, pads are classified as luxury products, and that's why taxes are imposed on them. So we seek to reclassify those parts. Now, government in the 2024 budget responded to 2 of the needs. One of them was to remove the 15% VAT on locally manufactured parts. And then the second one was to remove the 15% VAT on imported raw materials for manufacturing parts in Ghana. Now, the 2 left is the imported VAT on finished products and then the reclassification. So that is what we are pushing. So this is going to be part of the stakeholder engagement next week when we meet.
Honorable, thank you very much. We were waiting to see the bill go through first reading, and then when the public discourse is open, all of us can contribute to fine-tune it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.